课碳税还是要缴这些买碳权的钱，其实真正的目的是说，因为我制造了污染，但是我又没有花钱去保护地球，所以我缴的钱是给别人去做保护地球的意思嘛？我是去跟他交换
碳权交易，对，没错。
好，各位朋友，大家好，欢迎收看三五香赏屋，我是 Tate。我们今天赏屋说说呢，是要来跟大家讨论碳权的议题。碳权的议题在之前，台湾一开始我们接触到这个资讯的时候，我们就第一个反应是，所有的制造业、营建业啊，他们因为要缴碳税啊，付一些额外的费用，所以所有的东西物价它的成本会提升，所以未来的售价、终端价都会跟着一起提升。我们大概只有了解这个资讯，可是我们不晓得。到底这个碳权跟环保跟等等等这些到底有什么关系？我们今天这一集的节目呢，会支援两种语言，就是中文跟英文，大家可以打开CC字幕去切换你的中英文。右边两位是我们今天的来宾主角，他们是专门从事就跟国际环保组织相关的产业。那我先介绍一下，就是在我们最右手边这个是 Joe， 然后中间这个是 Ryan。那我们请他们自我介绍一下。
我是 Joe， 我是 Ocean Blocks 里面的一个成员。今天很高兴可以上来这里和大家讨论碳权这一个跟 ESG 这一部分的话题。我是在 Ocean Blocks 里面的科技方面主导，跟台湾市场这一方面的负责。左手边这一个 Ryan， 他是 Ocean Blocks 的 CEO， 那我也让他来自我介绍一下。
Hey, thanks for inviting me to your channel. My name is Ryan Babbage I'm the CEO of Ocean Blocks. We started Ocean Blocks 3.5 years ago, and we're here to share our experiences today.
那我们就直接进入今天的主题，因为我们今天主题其实是要讲到就跟碳权有关，可是其实我们又不是只有要单纯探讨，因为要缴碳税，因为要支付这些费用或环保相关费用，所以房价要涨了，还是物价要涨了？我们不是只有探讨这个，我们想要探讨了解更多跟环保有关。那首先我们就请两位专家来跟我们解释什么是碳权，然后什么是 ESG。ESG
is created by governments in connection to the market, private and public, to achieve goals in climate. So the E stands for environment, the S stands for social, and the G is how we govern the interplay between environment and social aspects of transitioning to a green economy. So the combination of those acronym as ESG is what we do from a holistic process in changing mindset, changing economic behavior, and changing the way business is done to achieve environment, social governance goals.
碳权跟 ESG 是有什么关系的？
So carbon is just market incentive and an understanding. You need to account for carbon to then realize how we're affecting the planet in global warming. So by knowing how much each company emits and each country emits in carbon, we can actively work to reductions on the carbon goals that companies and countries set for their industries.
好，那我们接着请就来直接解释一下碳权的定义，就它的由来是什么？为什么要有这个东西？
碳权这个东西其实它是一个衡量的工具，来评估看看大家做的一些事情，不管是在国内或是国际上，用这个碳权的计算方式，用 science 去把它算出来的一种 formula。
我们讲的碳权的碳是二氧化碳嘛？
对，
还有分别的吗？是一氧化碳。
Sure. From an environmental perspective, I mean, and for companies, carbon, all we need to realize and understand is that because of global warming, we need to understand how much carbon we account for. There are different types of carbon from different environments, like say, there's blue carbon, which we work within oceans, and the dynamic of understanding how oceans sequester carbon and how much we need to look after and improve our oceans in order to get better carbon sequestration. Then there's agribusiness that derives green carbon. So green carbon is all of the carbon that comes from nature-based assets like trees and plants. All of the farming and cropping, it's all encircled in green carbon. Basically, from a business perspective, you don't really need to know the differences between blue and green. You just need to understand why we need to reduce our carbon emissions annually, how to go about measuring, accounting, and reducing over time so we can reach carbon neutral goals.
人类现在因为太进步了嘛，我们会一直产生碳嘛，就是因为产生太多危害环境的这种物质，所以我们现在才要去量化它，然后去规范它。
对，就是变成说，之前大家不知道说，我们其实每一件事情都会产生不一样的 emission， 所以就变成说，现在用这一种衡量的方式，不管是个人还是公司，他们都可以去衡量，去知道说我们对环保这一方面做了有多少的影响跟破坏。
我大概就我理解的部分跟大家分享一下。ESG 其实就是在讲企业跟环境我们要怎么样永续经营，而且它是要倡导，就是说它做一件事情它是可以回收再利用的，然后是他做这件事情规划的是未来，他不会说我现在做完，我赚到钱我又把它收起来就结束了。我们做任何一件事情都可能对地球产生破坏，
要对地球负责，
所以才有碳权或者这个碳权指数去衡量计价我们产生的伤害嘛。刚刚我们有讨论到碳权跟 ESG， 就是碳权只是ESG 的其中一小部分。以台湾的产业来讲，因为像我们知道建设公司他们就有宣传说他们现在配合政府有做 ESG 这件事情，可是我们到现在都还没有很明确的产生的碳要给多少钱，未来这部分整个国际怎么接轨，然后怎么计算。
ESG it's sort of a metric by it's gonna impact everyone eventually. So we try to find a universal way to understand the environment and the people within those environments within each country and how to measure and govern that. So if we all have the same understanding of how to assess the environment, the people in the environment, work with businesses, work with governments to align activities toward carbon neutral goals, then we are able to achieve what we call, the whole ESG spectrum. We're still at the beginning stages of ESG globally. It's not only Taiwan that's just starting its transition into a green economy. It's basically all economies that are wakening up to the whole concept of ESG and going carbon neutral. We call it also the green economy and all the changes that are happening to make a better sustainable world. Using ESG as a holistic framework, we're able to understand what that is country by country and what it means to each country and the economics within that country, how it changes behaviors, like from a behavioral economic perspective, how it changes the way we do business and how businesses transition over time. So governments will set the transition time because of their economic, and they want to align with the Paris Accord and all the things that they've signed on to achieve a carbon neutral goal over a time scale. And now within that, it starts to affect pretty much large businesses first, medium-sized businesses at the same time, and smaller scale businesses obviously will have some huge impacts as well. But there's so much to discuss in the topic. It's better not to over advise on each different part, but give more of a general aspect into ESG. So that's pretty much, it will affect all of us from this year, because more governments are putting in laws to enforce and awaken ESG and the understanding of ESG globally. So as all of these laws come into effect, whether it's laws on shipping, trade, the links that we have between our supply chains and how businesses talk to each other and translate money activity to and fro. It's important that all those dynamics come into play to understand ESG fully.
产生这个费用的目的就是逼大家不能过度生产，或者是只管眼前的东西，不管以后的东西。
那当然第一步是要先衡量嘛，衡量说哪一个企业有多少碳， 就是那个我们说的 emission， 这样子才会知道说，那这样子我们需要多少去做这个抵押这个动作，所以这个也是部分之一而已。那刚刚 Ryan 想要讲的就是说，会是一个全面的一个东西。我们相信时间过久了一些，我们也会知道它也会成熟嘛。那我们也会去改变说，计算的方式有可能会更新，或是说不定会用不一样的方式去衡量。可是这一部分整体来讲，也就是我们 ESG 的一部分。
好，那我们第三个问题呢，是要跟他们探讨一下，就是碳权交易的原理跟它的运作模式，然后如何取得碳权，还有是不是有这个交易所的存在。
So carbon trading as a whole is a market dynamic to help achieve carbon goals through finance. And basically, it works on a cap and trade system. So governments give you a cap on the amount of carbon you can have in each industry per annum. And you, within each industry type, if you don't use the carbon allocation that you have, you can then trade the balance. But if you've used more than you need to buy the balance somewhere else. So that creates a trade mechanism. So if I have not emitted a lot of carbon and I have carbon to sell, then I can sell it to some other company who is through an exchange, but I can sell it to another company who's emitted more than their allocated allowance. So the European market is the most developed market in carbon and trading of carbon. And other economies have taken shape now and are coming to the party with facilitating their own carbon trading organizations to help them in trading mechanisms through technology to do these cap and trade interlinks. But generally it starts with an inward approach. So countries start to look at how much carbon they're expelling, how much they're sequestering, and then they try to see how much carbon that they can allocate as trade internally. And the surplus, they look to trade globally. So that's pretty much how it's falling into place at the moment. But Europe is the leading market in global trading of carbon. So governments are still putting in laws within countries. So who can trade and who can't trade is not yet 100% clear because there's two markets. There's a compliant market, which is a forced market, which is structured around the European understanding of carbon. Then there's a voluntary market, which everyone is trying to participate in, but it's a complicated market because, not everyone measures the same, not everyone's laws are the same, our economics is different, trade links are different and supply chains are different. So we're all trying to, COP28 now is trying to sort out how we can work more in synergy with a global trading mechanism for carbon. And each country is setting up its own global base on carbon trading, and governments are backing all of those main trading companies. But it's still young, everything is just new, this whole market is new, which is why you need to understand that carbon is just a component of ESG. It's a part of ESG.
解释一下碳汇是什么？
So when you sequester carbon, you actually want to know where that carbon is going. So you want to lock away carbon for a long period of time because you don't want carbon to go back into the environment. The whole game is to reduce emissions, reduce greenhouse gases annually, and go to a carbon neutral state for all economies over time. So if we know what carbon is being sequestered and we know how to lock it and keep it, we kind of sinking of carbon. That's the best way to kind of understand it without going deep into the science and environmental understanding of carbon sinks and things like that.
OK， 那大概了解碳权的交易以后呢，那接着想要问一下，目前全世界啊，就是我们这个碳权跟 ESG 发展的进度到哪里了？我们在台湾觉得它很陌生，可是好像在欧洲已经大家都很重视的话题嘛。
So, the European market started in carbon years and years ago. It's just that because of economics, countries didn't want to account for their carbon. If you account too early, it affects the economics of your whole country. It's been a battle to get everyone to agree to reducing carbon annually, all these countries. But the European market, because its laws were set in place quickly, it transitioned quickly, it placed capital into helping that transition happen, and it made its market compliant. It was a forced market, whereas the rest of the world is still on a voluntary market. We have a choice. They are compliant, we're voluntary. But by Europe doing trade with all economies, it brings in the countries that do business with Europe. They have to adhere to European laws by default. Because if I'm trading with a European country, they give me their rules. I need to apply those rules to what I'm doing in my business. So we account for scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. It's a complicated understanding, but that's what is shaping the market, and that's how we're able to move forward.
欧洲其实已经做了蛮多年了，所以他们的碳权这一方面相对来讲已经非常成熟，所以他们的话是有规定说，至少在欧洲里面是要怎么做，全部的法规都已经很成熟了。世界各地呢，现在还在做一个要跟上的一个动作。当然，欧洲这个市场，如果我们像台湾要外销去欧洲的一些产品之类，或是要跟欧洲要有一些交易的话，他们的这个规定也都会变成说，本来在这个台湾或者在其他国家没有规定的，也会受到欧洲的影响被规定。
比如说像我们刚刚讲碳权，这个算是 ESG 的其中一部分。ESG 其他还有哪些是没有被拿出来大家探讨的？比较重要的有哪些？
I mean, the important things on a global scale is food security. All economies need to make sure that they can feed their people, that they're improving the standard of living, which is social. The environmental side of feeding the nation and supporting that these are the most important things in looking at within the ESG spectrum, how we will improve the standard of living and sustainable living into the future for us. But what's going to force the change and quicken the pace of change is that all these voluntary markets are eventually going to be compliant. So the world is going to be the ones who've signed on agreeing to lowering emissions. They're all going to be pulled in slowly, and governments will enforce a more compliant market over time. So we won't always have the choice. Choice will be slowly removed, and it will be a compliant market. So we'll have rules enforced around what we do all the time. So food and water security are the other things that we need to touch on because it's so important. Many economies don't have enough clean water and enough food.
台湾现在的 ESG 就是比如说像不动产的产业嘛，为了卖房子，我搭了一个接待中心，可能花几百万甚至几千万的台币去做，但是我房子卖完了半年1年以后，我要把它全部拆掉。然后 ESG 他们就是觉得说，他们要找可能是可以再利用的材料，比如说他们找那个货柜屋来，用货柜屋搭，结束以后还是可以把货柜屋拿去别地方用，这样还是有算在是 ESG 的范畴里面吗？
Yeah, there's a lot that's happening within the building industry and within the whole infrastructural change of buildings, because as we go green, we're starting to do more smart buildings, more smart living. People want to know that the environments they're living in breathe cleaner air. The materials that are used in the buildings are more sustainable. They're cooling, they last long. So pretty much a life cycle of a whole building is now being measured. Countries that are doing this in a big way, investing huge money to transition to smart cities, is countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Abu Dhabi. So the UAE and Abu Dhabi are also doing whatever they can. Saudi Arabia has already placed a huge amount of capital to deploy something called Neom City. So all of this, they've thought about how to live smarter, cleaner, greener lives with building the right type of infrastructure, measuring the quality of the building, measuring the air, the substance of what the building's made of, green steel, green concrete, everything. They're trying to make it better and better and better so that living standards are improved. And that's part of what we call the circular economy, where we will recycle things and improve things and do things and live better lives. So that falls into ESG. So how the environment and the materials we take from the environment change the standard of living and the quality of living.
反正跟各位讲啊，因为今天我们探讨的议题啊，对于我们来说相对陌生，但是其实在很多比我们更早一步踏入执行这个议题的国家，我们是差比较大的距离嘛。但是在那边发展已经很成熟了，可是我们要去想一下，就是台湾其实没有被强力要求，可是这个是如果我们自己是从事这个产业的话，我们应该主动去跟上环保的议题，就我们应该主动去保护地球，而不是说别人哪一天要来要求我们才要去做啊。就是我觉得今天主要跟大家更多想要倡导的是这个方面的思维，所以说课碳税还是要缴这些买碳权的钱，其实真正的目的是说，因为我制造了污染，但是我又没有花钱去保护地球，我缴的钱是给别人去做保护地球的意思嘛，我是去跟他交换。
碳权交易，对，没错。
总是有人会负责去做这些事情。那这是因为就是我一个好朋友的朋友嘛，所以他们是特地来台湾考察。其实他们在全世界都在考察哪边可以再产生更多碳权嘛。
不管是种红树林啊，或是
海藻啊，
对，稻田去测试说它对碳的吸收是有多少，就是碳权这一部分。
那太阳能是没有意义？
不是啊，太阳能其实也是，就是我们说的 green energy， 碳权其实也是其中一块而已。那他们全部的东西都是相连的。
As we all want to live better lives and transition to a greener economy, we're all going to be touched some way, directly or indirectly, by ESG. The major things that we also need to understand is that financing of all of these changes is probably been the biggest problem and the slowing part of change. But at COP28 in Dubai in just a few days' time, they have figured out ways to help economies to finance a transition to green, basically lending them money at a lower rate that they can use over a lengthier period of time, but they can use now, change over the economic infrastructure, the things that they're doing, the education components, and everything that leads to living healthier, greener, cleaner lives for all economies, but doesn't impact the economic output, because some countries have a lot more money than others. Others are in deficit, so there needs to be some kind of a balance in how all of these things are financed. So finance is one of the most important parts of this ESG understanding, because as investment is placed into different allocated environments, it helps achieve these goals faster. But if there's a slowing down of investment and we don't have the right investment portals, then it kind of like all falls over. So financing of the whole ESG changeover and us living better lives and trading better and having, more tight relationships in trade, because we all understand each other and measure the same way. That is one of the most important things that I'd like to leave the audience to understand. And maybe later, when you've got questions from your audience, at a later stage, you can invite us back to talk ESG in particular channels.
ESG 这一部分起步来讲的话，真的是很不容易。不管是对国家还是对企业，都是非常非常不容易的。所以长久以来，它是值得的。不管你是早开始还是晚开始，都要开始。不如早一点开始。那早一点开始的话，会有更多时间去适应这一块，然后会去有摸索的时间。那你如果是晚一点开始的话，你只是跟上，一直都是在追。那所以我们就是觉得说，不管是国际还是台湾，现在有这个机会，那有这个机会的话，我们就先冲。
你们这次来台湾考察，觉得台湾能够产生碳权的这个潜力如何？
Well, I had a quick journey around, so most of what I saw is basically agricultural. So there's a lot of maybe carbon that we can derive from agricultural activity. The improvements in the data from current agricultural understanding, all the science that has gone into getting higher yielding produce for the Taiwanese has been something that we can use to help us understand how we can measure carbon within the agri space. But I haven't had a lot of time to assess, buildings and infrastructure and look at other components within Taiwan with my short 4-day stay. But maybe next time I'll enjoy a longer stay and I'll have time to look at other different things. and we can dive into different potential. But I think on a whole, Taiwan is really early, but I think because the Taiwanese culture, the people, the economic output for such a small country, they will transition quickly. So I think once everybody understands what it is to live a better life and have a greener economy, but without it affecting too much of normal life with government incentives and things like that and green financing, I think the transition for Taiwan will be fast. Because generally Asia, the pace in Asia is very quick once there's money alignment and understanding. So I think Taiwan has a lot of potential and I'm excited to see the transition.
好了，那我们今天这个节目啊，简单跟大家分享到这边。好，那也还是很难得，请到2位专家来跟我们分享这个碳权，因为毕竟台湾算是走在比较后面的，那他们比较前端的愿意来跟我们分享这些资讯，然后再来是 Ryan 他会在那个 COP28， 他是其中一个成员嘛，到时候他们会宣导，就是说政府跟企业怎么样去合作。未来环保是一个很大的议题，它也是很大的成本。对于所有的制造业跟营建业来说，我们其实本来就该负担，不是现在才要负担。从50年前、100年前，甚至200年前有开始有工业有生产之后，我们就应该负担的。只是我们是到现在才意识到这些事情。就反正就我们这一集就宣导大家，就是为地球的环保尽一份力，好不好？然后最后感谢Thanks Joe and Ryan。好了，那我们节目就到这边了。喜欢我们节目的朋友们，记得帮我按赞、分享、订阅、追踪我们 IG， 好不好？那今天就到这边，大家再见。
Bye.